Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is a frequent visitor to our show, Dr. Les Lockridge. He's here today to talk about the latest development at his practice. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lockridge.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me again.
Right. You know, every time you come on, you have a new development, and you have something new going on at the clinic.
We're transitioning into a new EMR, an electronic medical record, from an old electronic medical record. I'm sure you know from Penny just how much fun that can be.
Oh, yeah.
That's more boring and painful subject than anything else.
But I think a lot of people I think a lot of people are interested in it because in this day and age where everybody's hearing about people being hacked into, like there was I don't know if you heard about it during the last presidential race, about emails appearing where they shouldn't be, but how safe are electronic medical records?
My assessment, and this is coming from somebody who's not a tech guy, all right, disclaimer, but my assessment of the one that we just purchased is it's immaculately safe, at least to the greatest degree that it can be. All the servers are either offsite or multi-firewalled, and everything is encrypted, password protected. I don't think that there's much more that can be done to make it safe. They always say the hackers are one step ahead. I think in this circumstance, the hackers would probably use their efforts more fruitfully than to get medical records from the Northeast Kingdom.
Yeah, they wouldn't find out anything in mine. But I know back in the old days, back when you began medicine, everything was on paper.
Yeah, back in the good old days. I've been a physician now for 20 years, which really surprises me and my mother. But when I first started, it was still the era of paper charts and the multicolored tabs, and having the chart meant you basically held the patient in your hand. And those days are essentially gone. There are a few practices that still maintain paper charts. Ours have been gone for more than 3 years now.
Now, what are the pros and cons of electronic medical records?
Well, I would say there's easier access for a healthcare provider to patient records. That's in general. The big con is you are always susceptible to that fateful day when everything goes down and you're dead in the water. And that has happened to us. We muddle through, but if it happened too many days in a row, it would be a real problem. I suppose that security is always an issue, but it was also an issue with the paper charts. You have to understand the purpose for the mandates for electronic record. When the government started mandating electronic records for reimbursement, they were also able to mandate an awful lot of criteria for reimbursement, things that may or may not have a lot to do with the well-being of the patient and the care that the patient provides. And some of those criteria can be cited to reduce reimbursement. There's a lot of people that think that electronic medical record mandates were solely for that purpose of reducing reimbursement. Whether or not that's true, it certainly has been the outcome.
Right. I think the good thing about electronic medical records is if, I don't know how you did it in the old days, but if I'm, you can take my medical records from here, at least portions of them, and if I'm in an accident in Boston, the doctor down there can get my records, correct?
That's right, and that's the access that I was referring to. Not just for somebody's regular doctor or regular consultant or even regular hospital. The records can, in most cases, at least the poignant ones, get faxed or beamed to a remote location or to a subspecialist that you want a patient to see for a unique skill or treatment.
Right. Now, are you one of these, because I know the one thing, it's been hard for some patients to get used to electronic medical records. I think it's getting better as the older doctors retire, because I say that with total respect, is it was hard for them to learn the technology. You know, the doctors now coming out of med school, they were born with electronics. You know, they came out of the womb probably with electronics in their hands, so they're very comfortable with it. But I hear a lot of people talk that their doctor spends way too much time looking down than looking at the patients. But as I said, I think that's probably changing a little bit. Can you do both?
Well, I'm kind of in a unique position to operate under that and comment on it, because I really am in the transition period. You know, like you alluded to earlier, at the beginning of my career, it was very different. A lot of things were very different. Allowable call schedule for medical trainees and things were completely different. The reimbursement schedules were completely different. The practice of medicine as a business was completely different, and certainly information access was very different. It was changing when I got done with training, but it was still largely paper chart centered. I don't think that it was so much the older doctors weren't able to adjust to the new technology as much as they wanted to spend their time doing something else. They had developed a style for relating to patients and for helping people. And they didn't want to deviate from that style. They wanted to spend their time, you know, working the trenches like they always had. And it was beneficial for the patient. It was probably the right thing for that doctor to do, rather than invest a lot of time in learning new technologies and a completely different approach to patients, only to retire a year or two later.
Well, it's like our personal doctor that we went to, Dr. Robert Wood, is, you know, he, you know, as you know, he retired from he left the lucrative field of anesthesiology and went back to school at, you know, maybe late 40s or so, to become a primary care doctor, and he worked on his own, no EMR or anything. Well, not on his own. He had his wife with him, and Kathy, and he always told me that he was born a generation too late, because he understood the importance of electronics and everything. He understood that.
He was actually very savvy at it.
Right, but he still loved the people component of healthcare.
Right, and I think that was more the situation for a lot of the senior doctors. They weren't willing to change because they had a lot of affinity and comfort with the way that they'd been practicing. And you do something effectively for 40 years, and somebody who you can't see, that you've never met, mandates to you that you change it entirely. Well, you know, you're not going to be that excited for it.
Yeah, I still think age has a little bit. You know what? I have decided I'm no longer 25. I know. I'm going to tell you, I feel great. I do. I feel super. I'm 51. And every once in a while, when it comes to technology, I start realizing, no, I'm not that young. Like when I look at the panel on my car, and it looks like something I would have seen in a jet growing up. And then even we got this new washing machine where you don't have to adjust the water level. It's all electronic. It's like life is an adventure for me now.
It's a new world, Scott.
So you have the EMR, new EMR. So what else do you have going on?
Well, the real news is the recent availability of a lab service in our office. I think that's probably more exciting to the average person, and certainly to the average patient. We've contracted with Mercy Labs, and they are drawing blood in our office and testing blood on at a remote location. And thus far, the partnership has worked out very well.
So it's not so you don't own them. They work out of your building? How does that work?
Well, it's not really a business venture for us. It's a service issue. They pay us I would say a token rent for space, and they took on one of our employees as a phlebotomist, which was good for us in that her hours were dwindling, the hours that we could offer her, and we wanted to do better for her. In those little ways, it's advantageous for us, but really the impetus behind getting this done was as a patient service. We wanted to offer a laboratory that would deliver good patient service, that would give people, I wouldn't say a bargain, but maybe a little bit of a break financially. And also, obviously, the convenience of being able to go right across the hallway and get your blood drawn instead of going to the hospital for a blood draw and waiting in line.
Right. I hope your person is really handy with the needle, because I am better at needles than my older brother, who you also know. But it isn't one of my joys in life. So.
Liz Carr, she's the phlebotomist there now. A lot of people know her from her work at the hospital for many years, and she's done a very good job phlebotomizing people lately.
Right. Actually, I had my flu shot there, and no problem. Actually, to tell you the truth is, a little off the topic with my world of history. I've actually written about the evolution of history of healthcare here, and it seems so. I talk about needles, but let's be real. Even in your time, you have seen those needles get so sharp that you don't feel them anymore. I interviewed one person who is worked in. Actually, I've interviewed a number of people who worked in the day where they actually reused needles and sharpened them. And
oh yeah, you're talking to another one. Essentially, my first rotation at the VA was only a year after they stopped reusing needles and resharpening their own needles. Now, I was in training then, but still, that's part of my era.
What services is this company going to offer the area?
Well, they're going to do lab testing of essentially all types, blood, stool, and urine testing. They're going to be necessarily limited in some of the blood tests that they can do, because they're not actually a reference lab. But I'm a hematologist, and a lot of the blood tests that I order are a little bit exotic and esoteric, and I have yet to find one that they don't do and actually get back to me within a couple of days. The only thing that they really can't provide is a stat lab, and the reason being the laboratory is at a different site. The blood is drawn in our office. The samples are transported to a different site, and that's where the test takes place.
Or stat lab, is that a quick?
Yeah, that's I guess what you would call an emergent or an urgent lab, something that you need to have the result back from in less than an hour.
Well, you know what is I guess watching MASH growing up helped me, because I understood what stat was, and so.
Well, one of my greatest influences.
So who, I've not being a medical person, I've never heard of, is it Mercy?
Mm-hmm.
What is this a really good organization, good business?
They seem to be so far. I'm going to judge people based on my personal experience with them, and with a company, the same applies. We're early in our relationship, but thus far they've worked with us very much on the up and up. They have an awful lot of experience. We are far from their first site. They have a really broad range of services, and they've treated people very well thus far.
Hey, that's good. It's no secret, even to me, who I'm not a doctor, but I'm a patient. Healthcare is expensive, and no matter what is, even with insurance, it can still be expensive. Is this going to cut down on cost at all?
Well, I hope so. What we've seen in the last couple of years is just exponential, off the charts increases in copays, deductibles, and it's gone right along with limitation of coverage. This is obviously not good for patients. What we've seen thus far, and I want to say clearly I am not a spokesman for Mercy Labs, they've just contracted with my clinic. What we've seen thus far are really nice advantages for the patients. Besides the convenience and the service level, they seem to have a willingness to accept whatever insurance will pay. We even sent a canary into the coal mine for this patient who's also an employee at the clinic, and got some lab testing done and examined the bill and what her responsibility was. So we feel fairly good about what that's going to do financially for the community. And truthfully, it's time that the hospital lab gets a little bit of competition along those lines, and also for patient service.
Yeah, competition in anything can be really good. And I'd like to think that most people in the healthcare field, the bottom line is the patient. So I don't think anybody will mind competition, because you're all in it for the patient.
Right, and different entities bring different things to the table, and you're absolutely right. Competition does make everybody flourish. It drives improvement, and there's not a higher calling than improvement of healthcare.
Right, and you're living through a period of time where change just seems to come so quick. Just so quick that you, I often say, I wouldn't want to be a doctor or a nurse. I have the utmost respect for good ones, because I just, and the problem also comes in with all this technology. Our generation seems to think it's going to keep us alive forever. Now, there's a limit. And unfortunately, you being an oncologist working with people with cancer, I think you probably see a lot of despair too.
We do. It's the nature of the beast. But truthfully, we have more happy days than sad days at the clinic. And technology has benefited cancer patients more than I think patients in any other field of medicine. We are not just keeping people alive longer, we're keeping them feeling well, or at least as well as they usually do, and allowing them to return to their normal lives.
Yeah, that's why and I've noticed, because I've had friends or acquaintances with cancer, is it used to be, it almost seemed it was going to happen that you were going to lose your hair with chemo, but I've noticed a lot of people don't lose their hair anymore.
No, Scott, a lot of my patients would out-hair both of us.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. And so, just looking into the future, do you have any more? Do you have any more plans? Because you're beating the odds. Because you are beating the odds, because most doctors, primary care doctors who were out on their own back not too many years ago, have had to join with hospitals to survive because of all the bureaucratic nightmare. Mm-hmm. How come you're surviving and other people weren't able to do it?
We're motivated to. That's a big part of it. We're really excited to serve the community in our own way, and we've got a lot of people working very hard towards those ends. As far as what's on the horizon, I'm hoping a little bit of downtime. I'd like to be able to settle into some of the changes that we've made before we take any more steps, truthfully. But whether or not we can afford to do that, we've got to see.
So what do you provide? What does the practice provide now? You have a lab now. You're an oncologist, hematologist. Then you have. I'll let you.
We have a psychiatric nurse practitioner that sees psychiatric patients. She's been on this show. She's excellent, really committed to her patients, very smart person who keeps on top of the latest developments really well.
Yeah, she I will say, and she's a super guest. She really knows what she's doing, and
Yeah, and a truly committed person, a really kind and caring person. We've also got occupational medicine. We have a nurse practitioner and a physician that take care of CDLs, drug testing, anything that you need for occupational medicine requirements. And we also do a little bit of urgent care between the two of those providers.
and you maybe you mentioned you also have naturopath.
Yeah, the nurse practitioner that does the urgent care is also a doctor of naturopathy, and she does a naturopathic clinic in our building. Does a lot of complementary care for my cancer patients and patients without cancer, people with metabolic problems, digestive issues, rashes. She provides a really nice service and a couple of really nice alternatives for people that either really want to stay away from medicine or just can't tolerate the medicines required for their treatment.
So we only have about 5 more minutes left, but since the lab is the big thing, what about the wait time? 'Cause we've talked about the money, but what about the wait time? Because you know what? That's the one thing I hate. If I think I have something wrong, and I hate waiting for the results. I'm a horrible person when it comes to patients.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are spoiled around here because we don't have to wait very much for many things. We don't have a lot of long lines at checkout. We don't have much traffic. And I'm absolutely the same way now. There's a couple of different phases of waiting when it comes to laboratory testing. There's the waiting for the result, of course, but even sitting and waiting to get your blood drawn can be a little bit unnerving. Besides the fact that you just become impatient, a lot of people don't like the idea of having needles into their arms. And the longer they spend in a waiting room, the more worked up they get about it. Now, this is probably going to change as the lab becomes a little bit busier, but thus far, I haven't seen anybody wait more than one patient to get drawn, and even that's kind of rare. In that sense, I think it's a really warm and friendly service. Then, as far as result timing, I get my results from those labs usually the next day. There are a few that take a couple of days. And so far, that's been my experience. That's far from a guarantee, but that's what we've seen.
Right. So any other benefits that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
We should probably talk about the hours of availability. The lab's open 8 to 4:30 every day, Monday through Friday, and that includes over lunch hours.
Okay, here's a question you just sparked. Is this only going to be for your patients, or is this for anybody who wants to use your services?
This is for anybody that wants to utilize the lab. Information flyers have been sent out to all of the local physicians, and even if your physician works for North Country Hospital, he can still order labs through Mercy.
Right. And in that, the benefit again is at least the cost, and
we can't guarantee that benefit. I can just tell you what I've observed so far,
right.
that they have thus far been accepting whatever insurance pays.
Right. And we could have a whole different show on just this whole thing called Obamacare and the big changes that are coming, but I'm going to leave that for a different show because I think you know, I look at you who have to operate this practice, and I know Danielle's always trying to stay on top, but that's one job I would not want, because I think some more big changes are coming down the road.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to have those kinds of things change so rapidly. They're not great about informing you of the change or what the problem is, if there is a problem. And I agree, there are probably more changes coming down the pike. We don't know what those are going to be. We don't know whether they're going to be advantageous or not. We're all hopeful. I do think we ought to have a show on that, and we should probably wait that out a couple of months, because I think in the next couple of months we're going to see the framework form of what's coming next.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. Your clinic is at providing health care, because I think a lot of people, they want to go to a patient-focused clinic, and wherever that will be, and you have some great practitioners there. And because, you know, I like to go to a practice where I'm not just a number. Now, I know there's other fine doctors, but you know, I think we both mourn for the departure of Dr. Wood, but you know what? He's sailed off into retirement.
Oh, and he's earned it. He's earned it. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So, okay. Anything else? 30 seconds.
No, just everybody have a Merry Christmas. Try to be safe.
All right, and thank you for coming on. And now it's your job to keep me upright and on this side of the sod.
Oh, no promises.
Thank you for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.